CI/CD, DevOps, AI, all of it. It's time we had a conversation, isn't it? We need to kind of actually make some sense of all these terms and these things that are being bandied around and actually understand what it is we're talking about and what they actually mean for our businesses and why we need to make sure that we're actually aware of them before we really push ahead in anything that we're going to do. Hi, my name's Ross, the creator and founder of Geordie Consulting and Geordie Intelligence, the YouTube channel that we're watching today. What I thought we'd go through is technical debt. Okay, we need to get this really clear and landed in everyone's head, because getting this wrong has serious consequences to a business. Okay, so I'm going to hide my face because I don't think you want to see me while we go through this PowerPoint. What I will do though is I'll put this PowerPoint up on our GitHub so you can download and have a look, maybe use it with your management team, just so that they can understand kind of what it is we're talking about. But this is a really important concept that you have to understand. The main thing to understand with this is if we look at BI, the Microsoft way, okay, we've kind of got data coming in, we've got to then curate it with our M script, we model it, and we then use DAX to bring out expressions and visualize it. Yeah, potentially then as well we're doing things in Power BI desktop further on, like we're building secondary reports, we're building Excel spreadsheets that are connected back into it, we're not exporting data, or maybe we are, but these are all then going to be liable to what we would call technical debt. So what is technical debt? There's a long definition here. Okay, basically at the fundamental point of technical debt is it comes down to four things. Okay, you've got kind of, is it deliberate, accidental, is it reckless, or is it prudent? Kind of is as the kind of the divides for it. It forms a nice quadrant because they're easy to do. But fundamentally, it's about what is the cost to fix. And by cost, we mean kind of the financial cost, but there's also going to be a time element to that as well. We're going to have to allocate resource to undo something, what we're kind of saying. So it's always important to understand technical debt. And as we say, there's like this nice quadrant to it. Okay, so we've got reckless and deliberate, kind of, well, who needs the consultancy? We don't need to hire anybody. Just needs to get it done. We don't need to design it, that kind of thing. We've got then like the inadvertent ones of, I didn't know what that means. I don't know what normalization, I don't know, the whole, I'm not sure. Okay, and these are things that they happen, and it's not about trying to throw blame or anything, but these happen, but we need to be aware when they happen. And then of course we've got the deliberate ones, haven't we? The deliberate prudent ones and the inadvertent prudent ones. The deliberate of, I've got a deadline, we have to meet this deadline. Big topic in CI/CD, in Agile, in insert name here of methodology, is very much around that deliberate prudent, where something will be curtailed because a deadline has to be met. So we talk a lot as well, don't we, about minimum viable products, those kind of things. These are often backed up by deliberate, prudent technical debt, that something hasn't been fully realized and would need to be done with further work for this next cycle of a project. And then we've also got the inadvertent, which is prudent as well, which, wow, now we actually see this in action. We went the wrong way. We need to do it a different way. All of these are perfectly valid, and it's worth understanding that these are things that you're going to need to work through and understand. Okay? And at any given point throughout your development life cycle of any technical project, and to be fair, these can creep in anywhere or any business process really, is we're going to have to do something about them to move it to that next stage. So part of your continual improvement cycle will always include an assessment of technical debt, and you should be going back and revisiting your technical debt and reconsidering it regularly. If I went back and we said, right, what's going on with our parkrun report pack as it's expanded through? Do we have any core debt items that we really need to do something about? And the answer is, well, of course we do. The two main ones that we're going to talk about today is like my people events, where we've ended up having to build a pivot table summary so we can have like a nice row per event per person that says, well, this person, this is what they've done. And again, that was largely due to, I was experiencing measure slowdown as we expanded to multiple events. It just caused mass slowdown. So I'm not sure if it's the right way, but the way it's also been built now, because it was a late addition into the model, is it's a very labor-intensive manual process to add it in, and that's prone to errors. And the other thing we've got is, of course, the ability to build the report packs, which is all still very manual. We have to manually add an event, which includes now, if we sort this people and events out, which of course I have done, is 5 tables per event need to be added, and then those need to be amalgamated together. So there's steps and steps and steps that would need to be done. So there needs to be a better way of automating it. And again, that's going to be potentially one of those ones where it's platform limited. So at the moment, we're doing everything in Power BI, and mostly in Power BI servers for the data flows, and then into desktop. We've crossed the line with this people events in terms of licensing. So we've moved this into premium license requirement, but premium per user isn't an issue for us necessarily. There would be a way of bringing it back, but in theory, it does mean that we could go down the premium per user route and use a Dataflow to pull these together. So we might experiment with both of those depending on what goes on. But again, that's part of the technical debt, isn't it? The cost of experimentation, the cost of testing is part of that cost of remediation. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to work through and plan accordingly. What I thought we'd actually talk about today is really uncovering one of the big mistakes that lots of people make, and also one of the big risk factors that you're really putting your business in as you push forward into AI without actually considering some of this. Now, I'm struggling with this video, and I've thought long and hard about the best way to make it, because what I don't want it to come across as is a consultant saying, oh, you need to use consultancy, we're the best. It's not what this is meant as. The point that you need to understand with this is that there are things that, from a human development side, that your teams will need to be aware of, and any developer will be aware of it. Ultimately, these are things that have driven DevOps as it initially came through, and then now as we're moving into this CI/CD world, so continuous integration and continuous deployment, basically means the same thing, okay? From your side, they're just different terms that fundamentally mean the same thing. You're going to continually iterate the solution that is in play in live. That's what they mean, okay? The reasoning behind it is about making sure that you've got just a steady churn. The problem with them is that to do them, you have to have the technical resources to understand what's going on. And the key thing with that, the key word there is understand. Okay? We've got the what was the Jesmond Dean parkrun dataset that's then expanded to be the Newcastle dataset, and then again is being expanded again to be looking at the whole of the Northeast. We've got issues with this, okay? And this is one of the things that I want to talk about. This is one of those areas that you just miss if you're running ahead with it. So if we go in and transform the data, and we look at we look here, one of the components that I've got, there's a couple of things with it, where one of them started appearing was this error on people all, and it's got a weird error message, and it's an issue that I need to fix at some point. I'm not fully sure why this is. It's just, I think it's a corruption somewhere in the file somewhere. And it works, it refreshes, so I've kind of just moved on from it. The main reason for it, though, is that we need to have something that came out when I started to do the Newcastle report, and that was actually the ability to see what is anybody's individual record like for an event. Okay, so if we come through to here, you can see what we've got is we've got someone's unique identifier, how many events they've done here, and then various records talking about it. So like this is their cheetah time, so the quickest time they've done it, the slowest time they've done it in, all that information there. So really what we're doing is we're taking the results for each participant, and we're kind of just making a pivot table out of it for each parkrun ID. And then what the idea being is that for every event that's in the report, we should have a row for that person as a summary of it. Otherwise, you end up having to try and derive and calculate those values on the fly. And again, one of the things with Power BI, with any kind of analytics, is if you left shift things and you push them as far back in the development cycle as possible, it makes life easier. Doing it this way, it makes it really easy. And then if we want to come back and say, well, what's the average number of events? What's the number of this? That? We've got a way of doing it. Okay, we can assess and see. So in terms of the migration that we need to do as we're left shifting everything up away from what's in Power BI desktop, where we've just kind of little bits have come through. And this, again, this is normal, but core part of your technical debt. And what you need to really understand as you're doing things is that piece, isn't it? What are we bringing on board now that we're going to have to fix in the future? And it's not, as I say, technical debt isn't something to look at and say, oh, this is terrible, we need to remove it completely. I think if we went down the route of saying we're going to remove technical debt completely from our project, the project would fail, if I'm being completely honest. The reality is technical debt is done for a reason. And that's the bit that you really do need to kind of get comfortable with and understand what's going on with it. So for this piece, what have we done? Okay, so we've got to the point, haven't we, where really simple, we've got data flows. Okay, so we've got a data flow for each event. That's the structure that works for this. And there's reasoning behind it. In theory, yeah, we could probably try and do it all as one big data flow, but I thought, no, we'll do separate ones. And again, this is a legacy that because we started with a single event or a single spreadsheet, then became, well, we now have X many spreadsheets for each event. With this structure that we've got now with the Northeast data set as a whole, we've got thousands of spreadsheets involved in this being pulled together and worked. And spreadsheet processing in Power BI is good, it works, don't get me wrong, but it's not the most efficient. Okay, no one's going to go, this is super efficient, this. So by separating it, it's keeping the workloads to quite limited package sizes. You know, we look and we say, well, I think Town Moor's probably had the most events, 670 or so. That in itself, though, is going to equate to, given that we need 2 spreadsheets per event, so that's what, 1,340 plus then the one for the event. So, we're kind of nearly 1,350 spreadsheets just for one event. And we have 20 events. So you can kind of gauge the level that we're at with this. So the way this is processed, though, and by doing it in this way, and everything about the structures that we've built has been built to be modular, that modularity is what will support you and what will guide you and help. So what we've got here is we've got an example. So this is one of the new updated data flows that we've got. And you can see we've got this people events with the little thing here, the lightning bolt. I hate this. This is one of the worst things about Power BI licensing that they have. The lightning bolt makes perfect sense in that this is, what it's saying is this table is the result of a previous table. Okay, license-wise, to do this, you have to be premium. So you either have to be premium capacity or premium per user. This is premium per user that we use, so that's fine. The problem is, there's an easy workaround for it. So what's the benefit? The main piece of premium is saying, well, you can't use a data flow as a source. I support that, makes sense. Yeah, this makes sense. There's reasonings behind it. So in theory with this, what we could do is we could do all our transformation work where we're pulling everything together, do that within a separate data flow. So have the data flow that reads all those other data flows. That would work. The challenge is always the same, okay? That when you're in here, if we wanted to, all we would do is we would hide the people table. So is it really a benefit? So what we'll do, so let's see, how do we go about doing a new thing? Okay, so what we've got with this is the way it's written now is we've got one drop down as a parameter. Okay, and we can see this is we've selected product. It'll come down and you'll see a drop down in a second. Okay, we can pick what we want that to be, and then we've got our 5 tables that will come out. We can see we've got some other parameters that are information that derives from that. We've got some temporary tables, which are things related to, again, these hidden tables, part of the stuff to help build it. And then we've got some functions, which are just doing the transformations. So the transformations of each file. So we've got a volunteer file and we've got the event file. So for each run that takes place, or each parkrun event that takes place, you have a volunteer file, you have an event. So those need to be read and processed. Those are functions, which is why we have 2 functions and then a sample file. Makes perfect sense. Okay, this works really well. It's really simple. And the temporary is just the steps these things are going through to get to that point. So what do we need to do? So all we need to do, if we're going to say, well, let's copy this, is we're going to go and hold down Shift, select everything. I'm going to right click and copy. Okay. So we've now copied this model. And I'm just going to hit cancel. We've now got, if we go to the next one up, so new big and by the sea, you'll see this is missing it. So this is the old one. So this is then still going to require that we go into Power BI desktop and we build that kind of that pivot table view of what's happening at each event. So what we can do here is we simply go, again, we do Shift, select everything, right click and delete. We don't need these. Okay, and then we've got to do Control V. You can't right click and paste. This is just a foible of Dataflows. And you see we've got our event product selected. So we're just going to change that to be new big and by the sea, which is what we know from the title of it. Hit apply. Okay, and it's now going to go away. So what's happening is, based on this, we're doing a lookup to get the folder name. So what's the folder in SharePoint that we've got the files in, and what's the URL in terms of what's the URL for parkrun going to be. So if we actually want to do anything with this, we then have a value for that as well. Now that gets us what we need, and then from there these 5 tables are going to be built. So if we pick the new table and we give it some time, because it will take some time to process 1,000+ spreadsheets, what we see is it will come back with a list of parkrun numbers and their profile for it. So how many times have they done the event? What was their quickest time, their slowest time, their best position, their worst position, or their lowest position number, their highest position number, their lowest age grade, and their highest age grade. I think we do. Do we do age grades? I can't remember now. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. We can add them, easy enough to add. But you see, it's even that question, oh, do we do age grades? This is one of those things, isn't it? There's always that view of we need to do more. And this is why data projects, it's not a one and done. It's always going to be, there's a next stage, a next iteration that we need to consider for this. Okay, so we've got this, here we go, right? And we've got the event title, which we need, okay, because that way these are going to then categorize these as the right event. We can do all sorts of things with this, because we could say, well, what's this person's lowest position ever on any event? What's their highest position ever on any event? All these are things that we can think through and figure out what the right thing to do is. But here we go. So we've got this. We can see this person here has done 218 events. Right? Their lowest position was finishing second, and their highest was 146. Boom. It works quickly, easily, and efficiently. We've pulled that in. All we now need to do is hit save and close, right? And it will bring this together, save and close it. The piece of work I've already done is to review and make sure that this GUID isn't going to be changed by this process, okay? Because that's obviously a core part. That's what drives the automation that refreshes everything. That's what drives everything, is these GUIDs need to be retained, and they do, which is again partly why we're just going through, we're stripping it out and we're putting a new one in. So it's just treating it as it's the same thing. We're just redoing the gubbins of it. That works. Okay. So we're new big and by the sea. We've got a few more to do. So I will, as I say, I will piece those together, do those. And then what we'll do lastly is we'll bring in and have a look and see what we can do with Power Automate Desktop to remove the requirement to bring in all those additional steps. So that what we end up with is just 5 tables, but the goal ideally is to get away from having to have 5 different, or having to pull in the individual tables for each event manually beforehand. If we can automate that using our SharePoint list again, that's going to be better. So this SharePoint list is going to do more and more work for us. We can already see things like this, when was it last refreshed versus the gap. And this is something that's going on. There is an issue with this where I've noticed where it's just a time zonal issue between Power BI Power Automate Desktop and the Power Automate service. Even though they should be in the same time zone, it seems to be treating them as different. So there's a couple of things I need to figure out with it, but that's not a huge problem. The main thing with this is to make sure that what we're really saying is, in the event that there has not been an event, we shouldn't need to refresh it because it's not been updated. That's the point. Okay, so there's still some work to do with this. Again, technical debt, but this is something which is iterative and will constantly improve and constantly worked on. CI/CD, DevOps, whichever way you want to call it. Agile even. So we've got our Power BI desktop environment, haven't we, here? And what would we do when we came through to fix this? What I'd probably do is actually come in, because what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, let's try and build some new, a new function for it. So what I'd potentially do is go in to transform the data. Right? And what we're looking to get rid of or to fix is over here. So we've got each event has got this manual 4-table set that's been pulled through for it. Then we've also used these here, but we know we've removed the requirement to have these now. That's gone. But we've then got, for these, where we've got each event, we can see we've got to manually add each event's event in. So it would be nice to be able to piece that together and have that really run as a function. So what would that look like in terms of, oh, we're going to do this now? Okay. And this is what we're going to need to figure out, because this is where the technical side is going to have to be done. So what I would probably do, as I say, is start with a blank one. We start with a blank Power BI desktop file and create the first piece, get it working, and then import it through into our model here. So let's go and do that now. Okay, so we'll start. Let me come out, zoom in here. Go to File, and blank report. Okay, and chances are we'll never end up really saving this report. This is always just going to be kind of a bit of a test bed that we want to see how does this work. Okay, and what we're going to want to bring into it is our SharePoint list and our raw SharePoint folder structure. Okay, because potentially that's what we need to look at as we then go into building the API side. And that's where I'm not certain this is going to work, because we need to figure out a way that will allow us to hand the URL through, which you can hand URLs through, but I've not done this with Dataflows before to this level. So let's see how well that works. Okay, so here we go. So let's go new query, more, and we want this to be a list. Okay, so a SharePoint online list, connect. It's going to want to know what's the URL of it, isn't it? Let me see, I've got it over here, haven't I? Of course I have. Okay, Control V. So you've got the implementation 1.0 and 2.0. I don't really want to go into it too much, but you've also got all the various things you can do in terms of how much columns do you get. It's to do with the support columns and the way it works for those in terms of these implementations. What I will say is, depending on what you want to do, you may find one works better than the other. I'm going to leave it at 2 for now. Okay, and we'll click OK. And if you think SharePoint lists have got lots of other support stuff that we just don't necessarily want. So we want this tracked event. So we've pulled that through there. And now what we want is a new query. So this is going to be our starting, isn't it? This is going to be our start. I'm going to call this start. Okay. I'm going to get rid of my face as well, because you probably don't want to see me, and we might want to start jumping around time-wise and things like that. And we'll see how this goes. Okay, so we've got the 5 core tables done now. Okay, so we've got a parameter. So we have a parameter that we've now created. Okay, so we've got a parameter that we've now got, and we've got our value. So what we're going to do is we'll come through to here. We're going to create a function here. It's going to be fn events. So what we've ended up with is this structure here, where we've got functions on the left-hand side, one for each one. And then we've got our list source. So the idea being, if I'm right with this, I should be able to come through here to the events, where we've created a new event. I should be able to say, we're going to go to the top here. So what we're actually going to do here is under the transform, there is the run function, add a column, sorry, we're going to invoke a custom function. What's the function, the column name going to be? Call it event, column, and what we're going to run, sorry, let me go, okay. So we've called the column events, and what we're going to run is this function event. And it says, well, where do I get the Dataflow ID from? And this is where we use the column reference to pick out the GUID, okay? So what I've done is I've used the GUID from one to form the parameter just to test it and make sure that worked, replicated that throughout all the connected ones. And now we hit this. So if we zoom out, what we should see is, so we've gone through, we've built the 5 tables now. It's all based on this core function that we've got. I had to make one tweak to make it work. And that's just, I think that's one I need to be honest about and need to tell you. So in order to get this to work within Power BI Desktop and using this tool set, and to be honest with you, this is much quicker, much better than what I thought it would be. Let me just copy that, do that now. What I've had to do is, let me get back to the right spreadsheet here. Okay, right, document. So if I go into here and go to options and settings and options, what I've had to do, because we're telling Power BI to go and just read these things and just do it kind of thing, I've had to, effectively you're kind of saying, well, is it bypassing security a bit? And you could kind of say it is. So where we've got here, the privacy level for the current file, I've ticked here, okay, to ignore privacy levels and potentially improve performance. Okay, and it does warn you this could expose confidential data to unauthorized people. Now, the way Power BI works and the way the privacy side of Power BI works is you kind of say for each data source, what level is it? And for most things, you'll say it's organizational kind of thing. You know, obviously, when we were going through and doing a lot of the stuff for COVID, say, and we were pulling things down from Johns Hopkins, we'd say public because that's a public data source. Likewise, you know, when you then combine that with your corporate data, you need to be saying, well, it's okay for the public to come into the corporate, but it's not okay for the corporate to go into public. And that's generally how privacy levels work within Power BI. So you can kind of go, things can go down, but they're not supposed to go up. Or yeah, one way or the other, whichever way you want to say. It's kind of public, organizational, private, and you can kind of get to that viewpoint where you say, well, these sources are okay to be piggybacked onto. These should never be going in that direction. Yeah. But for this, what we're going to do is we're going to tick this. Now, this is a whole model setting. So by changing this for this, it means we've potentially risked the whole model. Now, given what it is and what's going on, I think it's the right thing to do. Technically, yes, this is another technical debt that we've put in place. There is another workaround where you can kind of embed it all within the function and try and get the function to do it. But to do that, you'd have to hand the function the list of GUIDs. And it feels like you're doing workarounds for workaround's sake. Given what we're doing, given that we know everything is coming from our SharePoint site that we've got, it makes sense to say, right, we're going to tick this box. But it's one that we would need to be aware of, and we're carrying that risk that we're exposing ourselves to. So again, technical debt, it's everywhere. And the act of removing technical debt in a particular location or area doesn't remove it across the piece. Okay, so I'll just turn this on for here now. Okay, so we've now turned it on for our main report that we've built. So what I'm going to do for here, okay, is we're going to go in and say, right, let's go and transform the data. Okay, now pull this up here, open this. So what we're really doing, if you remember, is we want to be able to get rid of all of these little areas. You end up having to build these, maintain these, manage them. Oh, okay. And even the act of just trying to hide these, or you can see, you can imagine if I was having to manually build these for each and every new event that came through, everything, there's a cost to that. That adds to the time it takes to take updates live. So the goal that we really wanted was to have it all run from our SharePoint list, use our SharePoint list as our master source for everything. So here we are, right? So this is what we've got. So we've kind of got to the point, haven't we, where events, participation, volunteers, tracked event, no, volunteers, yeah. Events, participation, volunteers, people events, are coming from our other source. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go delete these 5 tables. Okay, so we've deleted the 5 tables that we had. Okay, by doing this, what we're doing, and the reason behind all this, is that when I bring in the 5 tables, all the legacy artifacts that we aren't going to use, they're all hidden. Okay, so technically they'll drop out of the model. What it means is we can check. And what you saw as we were going through trying to delete those is it saying these tables are used in an upstream context. So it means that we can then, by removing those, putting in our new ones that will have the same names, so the artifacts that will use them will be fine. It means that this will actually keep working. So if we go back to our title sheet here, got this, I'm going to go copy that, come back down to here, at the bottom, Control V, and you see, so we've added base list here. So I will put that into our other queries, into one of our tables that we've got. Got the events, we've got the functions that have all been written, appeared there, and we've got the parameter. Oh, sorry, so, okay, so if I click on events, we get events. We take on participation, we get participation. Yeah, we can see we've got the functions in between each one, and then we've got people events. So we've got all our data sets there. The big thing that's changed is we've got ID now as opposed to URL. So we need to fix some of the relationships. But now we know what we've got. What I should be able to do is come to here, like South Shields, and go to here. So these are all the tables that we shouldn't need, and hit delete. And if I'm right, it should delete all of them. Deleting them. Okay, so we've been able to delete everything. We've got a much simpler model now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this, 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 and this. Okay, so I was expecting, this is very much what I was expecting. This is kind of normal. As I say, this is the last part of that technical debt side that we need to unpick. So if we think back to the PowerPoint that we've got, what we've done here is we've fixed the event stuff, and the tracked event stuff has all been fixed now. So it's taken me a couple of hours, to actually go through and do everything. All in probably be, say, half a day worth of work to get this fixed. So it's not a huge, oh no, this is terrible to do, but it's one of those where it becomes really important that we make sure that everyone knows exactly what's going on and exactly how to piece everything together. So what do we mean with all this? It's the problem that you find is that if you go down the route of using AI to build measures or to do lots of work for you, as opposed to just being a junior member of the team, you run the risk of not understanding what the technical debt of your solution actually is. And if you don't understand what the technical debt is, that's then where it becomes very, very complicated to kind of determine, well, how do we evaluate the next step? And the next step is always the problem. If I know, right, at some point we're gonna have to fix this, and I need to allocate a day, a week, to fix that issue at some point, that helps me have that conversation. So the next refresh cycle, the next upgrade cycle that we're going to do, I can look at the technical debt. I've got, well, we need to fix this amount. We've got this many requests for new stuff, and we've got this many legislative changes, okay? Because CI/CD, DevOps, continual improvement, which is the term I far prefer to use, always relies on your compliance improvement and compliance, sustainability, and improvement, yeah? CSI, continual service improvement, and compliance, sustainability, improvement. Because what you will do is we need to make changes to what we do for compliance reasons. There is a legal change. We have to make these changes. Those are things that have to be done. There's no, oh, okay, yeah. Sustainability. So potentially these are your technical debt issues that you've got. What do we need to do to just keep the lights on? You know, there's a fix that we need to apply. We know this is going to break in a period. You know, you might have something where, oh, we know we need to make a change like that. Yeah, there's always a discussion as to whether some of those are going to be compliance, some of those are going to be sustainability, but those are going to be your two main things that you're looking at. And then lastly, you've got the improvements. So, hey, it'd be great if it could be doing this. Oh, it'd be awesome if that. Improvement activities. They should always be your lowest priority, for all they're the ones that will get the most attention. But what really gets the most attention is when, oh, well, we've failed to meet regulatory requirements and we've been fined. So as I say, compliance has to be first. Sustainability, keep the tool running, and then improvement. Once you understand that those are what you're going to need to be able to answer day in, day out, after, you know, throughout the whole refresh cycle of everything that you do, it becomes clear. We need to understand what's going on at every given point across our business life cycle. When we don't, that's then where we have problems. So I think it's kind of, this is, oh yeah, when you actually put it that way, it makes lots of sense. We are going to have to unpack and uncover all of those things. But the way we do it is by knowing and by having people on board who understand this solution that we've got right now. These are the weak points on it. And that's where AI as a junior is an asset. AI telling you what to do or putting all your stuff in and looking at just copying and pasting AI stuff in is a risk, because you just don't understand the technical debt that it's implying for you or that it is putting into your environment. So technical debt, huge one to be aware of. And I think that's really, for me, when I started thinking this through and piecing together what this article or what this video is going to look like, it made sense, as this is probably where the whole AI discussion and progression that I've been watching for the last 12 months across the industry and the disruption that it's had this is probably why I get a little bit edgy about it, that yeah, there's that, and it's that technical debt side that's just, it's missing from these discussions that we're having. You know, well, we just put it into AI, you know, put it into ChatGPT, Copilot will tell us what to do. Brilliant. And yeah, to a certain extent, it will get you 80% of the way, if not 90, and that's fine. And the issue is, yeah, like technical debt is normally less than 5% of the total solution. So, you know, what debt levels are you incurring now? What debt levels will you have at the next iteration? All those are things that you need to be aware of. And it's just making sure that you get there. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. Do you think I'm just kind of panicking and just going, do you think actually what you've said is, there's a lot of truth in that actually, and I can see why you'd be concerned about it? I don't know. You know, am I a naysayer? I could well be. For now though, stay safe, take care, ta-da.